This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
The spokesman of al-Sadr's office in Basra, Abdel-Sattar al-Bahadi, said that violent clashes erupted between what he called fighters from al-Mahdi army and government forces, which tried to raid al-Quzayza area in northern Basra in order to arrest members from al-Sadr movement.
Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki issued an order that raids and arrests without warrants be stopped. He also said that armed groups who violate the law must be dealt with swiftly.
Death is the clearest testimony of what happened in Basra, which without doubt will increase the number of widows, orphans, and the vengeance-related problems. After the events in southern Iraq, 3 Iraqi ministers said that the number of those killed in Iraq last month has risen by 50% when compared to previous months. This changes the perception that the situation in Iraq has relatively improved. However, the situation in Basra today has changed from the way it used to be in previous days. Families were able to transport their injured relatives to hospitals. Many of Basra residents believe that this was a good time to demand work. So instead of chanting death slogans and joining militias, as many have done previously, this time they demanded jobs.
We demand His Excellency, the Prime Minister, give us jobs. We have families, but we have nothing. Otherwise, 3 or 4 months from now, we will all join the militia.
In a step to control the crisis, al-Maliki ordered that all arrests without warrants be stopped and announced a 7-point plan to contain the current crisis. The plan calls for adding 10,000 men from the province to the Iraqi security forces and that the attacks on public properties be stopped.
The borders are porous. Cars loaded with weapons can enter. We received a tip that a certain car was carrying missiles, and we actually discovered that the vehicle had 40 missiles. Where were these missiles hidden to? Who is the military officer in charge of the borders?
Until the elections of the province councils, which will take place in October of 2008, the atmosphere will continue to be charged with politicians' ambitions and citizens' hopes to see an end to the crisis.
Joining us from Baghdad, journalist Ismail Haqi. Haqi, has the crisis between the government and al-Sadr movement been contained?
So far, one can say that the crisis has been contained, but one must also say that this containment can collapse at any moment. Many leaders from al-Sadr movement and al-Mahdi army complained about the large number of arrests, which they called random arrests. They said that the raids and arrests targeted dozens of al-Sadr movement followers. These leaders have threatened the Iraqi authorities that should the raids and arrests continue, then the ceasefire agreement that al-Sadr announced would be withdrawn.
Meanwhile, al-Maliki has rushed to say that this operation has achieved its objectives.
This is what al-Maliki had said. He said that the military operation had achieved its objectives. He even started to talk about what will happen after the military operation. He has ordered that 10,000 Basra residents be added to the Iraqi security forces. This is the government's view, but on the ground the military operation continues. Leaders from al-Sadr movement and al-Mahdi army have threatened the Iraqi authorities to stop these operations, or else the ceasefire agreement that was announced by al-Sadr will fall apart.
شكرا لك حقي إسماعيل صحفي من بغداد.
The humanitarian conditions in the city of Basra remain poor. The Iraqi Red Crescent is making great efforts to distribute food and medical materials to the residents.
with an announcement made by the Iraqi government that it has achieved major progress in the military operation carried out by the Iraqi army, backed by U.S. firepower in the city of Basra, in southern Iraq, the features of harsh humanitarian conditions began to surface in the oil-rich city.
Gas is now 20. The water used to cost a quarter. Now it is 500. Everything here is expensive.
Along with the food, water and oil sectors, other problems have risen from the interruption of work and school due to the continued state of tensions and residents' fear of moving freely.
Today on the television they said that school is open, but there are no teachers or students. But the principal comes. He comes every day.
For Iraqis, the longest time is spent waiting for aid to arrive as they stand in longer lines, awaiting the arrival of their basic necessities that are used in their daily lives. After the bloody events, this city has many needs. Hospitals, which are considered vital facilities, suffer from a shortage of medicine, vaccinations, and other necessities. They have become filled with the sick and wounded. The nature of the logistical support which the US and British forces are providing is unknown, or whether it is limited to supporting the Iraqi army alone or more than that. However, the situation remains ambiguous with the lack of clear positions, especially by the Southern Front and its military wing, the Mahdi Army. With this, the Iraqi government has transformed the outcome of the Basra battle. Safad Dahi, Al-Arabiya.
From the days of the Iraq War, today, April 1st, 2003.
And where are Iraq's leaders? The night before the ground war began, coalition forces launched a strike on a meeting of Iraq's senior command and control. They have not been heard from since. The fact that Saddam Hussein did not appear on the television screen today is interesting.
The statement by the American Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld, I personally said that I believe this man is a pauper. He is a villain, and one of the worst types of villains. From the exaggeration of his lies, which he always repeats, he cannot be taken seriously by many sectors of public opinion.
لم يعد يؤخذ جديا في الكثير من قطاعات الرأي العام.
As soon as U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice spoke about peace and easing Palestinian pain, the Israeli military machinery went back to work in the Gaza Strip. This news comes after 2 Palestinian activists from the Qassam Brigades, the military wing for Hamas, were martyred in an Israeli incursion east of Deir al-Balah in the southern Gaza Strip. In addition, 2 Palestinians who sustained gunshot wounds were transported to a local hospital. Backed by several military vehicles, an Israeli special force infiltrated this morning into the town of Deir al-Balah and hours later withdrew to the Ketzov military post near the Israeli-Gaza border. Parallel to the path of killings, the path of settlements continues to move forward in occupied Jerusalem and the West Bank. This Israeli campaign of killing and settlement expansion is adding yet another nail to the coffin of peace. In response to criticism by the U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice over the recent permits issued by Israel to build hundreds of new settlements, the Israeli government announced plans to build more settlements. Meanwhile, the plan announced by the Palestinian Prime Minister, Salam Fayyad, regarding the creation of a Palestinian-Turkish joint industrial zone was terminated after Israel objected to the construction site.
Immediately after Rice left the area, the Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert said that he didn't need to repeat himself every time that the construction of settlements in Jerusalem will not stop, and that this is exactly what is taking place in the West Bank and Jerusalem. Meanwhile, the Israeli Prime Minister is expected to meet with the Palestinian president. According to Israeli newspapers, more than 50 secret meetings have been held between the Israelis and the Palestinians. In the last meeting in Jerusalem, Ahmed Qureya held talks with the Israeli Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni over the final status issues with no progress to report.
We are dismayed that the Palestinian negotiation team is continuing to meet their Israeli counterparts amidst this dangerous settlement expansion campaign.
Although Israel announced it would remove nearly 50 barriers, the fact remains that these barriers are not more than small dirt roadblocks and only two had been removed.
They are talking about the removal of small roadblocks. We would like them to remove major barriers such as the Colombia security checkpoint.
No change will take place at the main security checkpoints.
We hear in the news talks about changes taking place here and there, but nothing is translated on the ground.
What we are seeing on the ground is a real joke. They have increased the number of security checkpoints from 521 to 580. Then they went ahead and removed 2 barriers. What they are trying to do is to keep the security barriers inside the Palestinian cities in order to Judify and annex more than half of the West Bank land. This is a crisis that must be stopped, and the world must be told the truth.
However, the truth is rather obvious, which indicates that Israel has no serious intention of trying to resolve the minor or final status issues.
We open with today's mortar attack on Nativ HaSara. 2 residents of the western Negev community were lightly wounded by 2 Palestinian-fired mortar shells. One of the mortars hit a house that had been damaged in another attack several months ago.
IDF forces operating inside the Gaza Strip killed 2 Hamas operatives overnight. 2 other Hamas gunmen were wounded in the clash with IDF soldiers. In related news, a Hamas activist who intended to assassinate a senior Fatah figure has been arrested on Egyptian territory. The Al Hayat newspaper reported that the Egyptians have no intention of releasing the man. And Cairo opened the Rafah border crossing between Egypt and Gaza to allow stranded Egyptians to return home. An Egyptian official said the crossing would remain open for 1 day only. According to the official, some 350 Egyptians had been stuck in Gaza since January when Hamas blew up parts of the border crossing. According to senior security officials, the terminal was open as a result of recent talks between Egypt and Hamas.
The discord in the Labour Party further escalated today amid speculation that party leader Ehud Barak is planning to create a new party comprised of Labour, Kadima, and the Pensioners' Party. For details, we go over to IBA's Leah Zinder in our Tel Aviv studio. Leah?
Yes, hi, Laura. I suppose the good news from Ehud Barak's point of view is that the Labour Party, which has been lost in a fog of indecision and lack of direction, especially since publication of the Winograd report, is back, alive, and definitely kicking. It all started, as we know, on Sunday when Cabinet Minister Fuad Ben Eliezer was caught by a live mic complaining about Ehud Barak's lack of leadership skills, and it continued last night with a frontal assault on Barak from former party leader Amir Peretz. At last night's 4-hour closed-door session of the Labour faction, Peretz lashed out to Barak, shouting, "You're obsessed with becoming Prime Minister, but you don't have an agenda and you're out of touch with reality." To which Barak responded, "There's nothing I can possibly say. I cannot compete with you as to being pathetic." And he went on, "I'll run this party with you or without you." Well, apart from that rather indecorous squabbling, 2 more important things came out of the meeting. The understanding, not yet officially spelled out, that there will be early elections long before 2010. By the way, we're looking now at Barak today touring the northern border. Barak also adopted Ami Ayalon's blueprint for action in the party, including more assertive Labour positions on advancing peace, promoting the evacuation compensation bill for Israeli settlers, and defending the justice system. And, of course, as you say, Laura, there are the reports that Barak is thinking about joining with elements in Kadima and the Pensioners' Party and running as a single bloc in the next elections. There's been no official confirmation. I couldn't get any from any of the parties involved. It's much too early. Everyone's waiting to see whether or not there will be a peace agreement with the Palestinians by the end of this year, or even a draft agreement by this May. If that happens, it will change all the rules of the game.
IAF Commander Major General Eliezer Shkedi has suspended training flights in the F-16I because carcinogenic material has been found in 2 more aircraft. Earlier, the substance dioxin was found in 2 of the planes. General Shkedi said the training flights have been suspended until an investigation of the problem has been completed. The IAF is currently awaiting the results of tests of an additional 10 jets and has still not determined how the material made its way into the fighter planes. F-16I pilots have been complaining of irritations of mucous membranes and throat for 3 years, but recently the complaints rose dramatically. The IAF said that the earlier complaints were investigated, but nothing was found.
The residents of southern Lebanon are carefully following up the political announcements leaked in media reports regarding an Israeli plan to carry out a new aggression on Lebanon. The Lebanese are questioning the validity of such information and whether they carry a real threat or are only part of a media propaganda. While some Lebanese linked the reports to the fragile situation in the region, where the U.S. is trying to draw a new map for the Middle East, others believe that such reports are somewhat exaggerated.
We will turn southern Lebanon into a car parking lot during the upcoming war. This was the latest announcement coming out of Israel. According to political analysts, this news indicates that a war has become imminent and southern Lebanon will be the hosting stage. While Israel wants to make up for its shortcoming in the July war, Hezbollah is still mourning the death of its leader, Imad Mughniya. For Hezbollah, the assassination of its military leader, Imad Mughniya, has opened a door that can't be closed until the party takes revenge. Because southern Lebanon is likely to be the place of combat between Hezbollah and Israel, we organized this tour in the south. On the Lebanese side of the border, you could see that the Lebanese army and international forces have fortified their positions. They also increased their military patrol units in the ground and in the air. Meanwhile, the fighters of the Lebanese resistance, whom you can't see, were put on a political and military state of alert, especially after their Secretary General, Hassan Nasrallah, declared an open war. On the Israeli side of the borders, the military and security preparations are at high swing. In addition, many Israeli farmers along the Lebanese borders have stopped going to their farms due to a fear of kidnapping. Meanwhile, the residents of southern Lebanon are living amidst fear in the shadow of a new war, especially since their memory of the July war is still fresh. Despite its political and security achievements, the July war has indeed left behind bad memories that are still fresh in the minds and hearts of southern Lebanese.
If Israel declares another war on Lebanon, we will not leave our country. We will inflict more harm on Israel than it sustained in the first war.
We, the people of southern Lebanon, have had enough wars, destructions, and disasters. If a new war is declared on Lebanon, I will be among the first ones to flee.
Despite the strong evidence on the ground suggesting that a war may erupt at any time, some political analysts believe otherwise. Among the facts cited by the analysts, Israel will not dare to declare a new war on southern Lebanon because the military arsenal of Hezbollah can't be overlooked, especially considering that its missiles can now reach Dimona in the Negev desert. In addition, the will of confrontation enjoyed by Hezbollah fighters is very high, which makes the war very different from other conventional wars. Moreover, it will be very difficult for Israel to bypass UN Resolution 1701, which carries international repercussions that Israel can't afford. Also, Israel will not dare to declare a new war on Lebanon, which may lead to a second Winograd report, especially after the first report left a permanent scar in the body and mind of Israel. While Israel is saying that it will turn the land of southern Lebanon into a car parking lot in the upcoming war, the residents responded by saying, Israel will be an easy prey for the nets of the resistance at both the national and military levels.
Arab politicians and media figures agree on the success of the Damascus Arab Summit and the importance of the comprehensive and candid speech of President Bashar al-Assad at the opening ceremony.
The Arab Summit in Damascus achieved a major success and was where Arab solidarity crystallized in the face of challenges that confront Arab nations. This was confirmed by Arab politicians and media figures. They were in consensus over the success of the summit and the importance of the comprehensive and sincere speech of Mr. President Bashar al-Assad at the opening ceremony, which restored confidence in the Arab public and raised the morale of Arab citizens. His Excellency Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the Foreign Minister of the United Arab Emirates, said that the Damascus summit should be considered as a model that can be built upon by many future Arab summits. In an exclusive statement to the Arab Syrian television, Sheikh Abdullah said that the Damascus summit was successful.
كان حديث مثل ما تفضل فخامة الرئيس بشار الأسد أمس.
I think that the summit was successful. The speech by the Honorable President Bashar al-Assad in the closed session yesterday was honest and beneficial. I think that there is a large possibility to build upon this summit in future summits, whether regular summits or consultative summits.
إن كان في قمم قادمة في المستقبل، إن كانت قمم عادية أو تشاورية.
In an exclusive interview with the Syrian Arab television, the Yemeni Foreign Minister Abu Bakr al-Qurabi said that President Assad's speech dealt with main issues which the Arab nations are facing. Al-Qurabi confirmed that the Damascus summit opened the road for defining the method of work and strengthening honesty and transparency in presenting the Arab issues.
سوريا قيادة وحكومة وشعبا على هذه القمة.
I congratulate Syria, the government and people for this summit, which was unique in many ways, including the organization and the logistical side of the sessions, whether open or closed. Also, the way that the Honorable President conducted the sessions. He gave the opportunity to everyone who wanted to speak and welcomed different opinions. All these elements contributed to the success of this summit.
تقبل الآراء أعتقد كلها كانت من العناصر التي أسهمت في إنجاح هذه القمة.
Dr. Mustafa Osman Ismaili, the advisor to the Sudanese president, confirmed that the Damascus summit was successful and achieved what was demanded of it. Dr. Salim al-Husr, the former Lebanese prime minister, confirmed that the Damascus summit ended with positive results and that this summit reiterated the need for Arab action to achieve national objectives in Palestine, considering it a central Arab issue. Sheikh Abdul Amir Qabalan, the vice president of the Shia Islamic Council in Lebanon, confirmed that President Assad's words were transparent, reassuring, honest, and clear. In an exclusive interview with Syrian Arabic television, Sha'ar Ali Ayoub, the editor-in-chief of the Lebanese newspaper Ad-Diyar, said that President Assad's speech was to the point and clear and contributed to the success of the summit.
The Arab Summit was not a meeting of just participating presidents alone or otherwise. It was a struggle between two views. Washington wanted to strike a blow to the Arab Summit in Damascus. The view of President Assad, who insisted on holding the summit as scheduled at its time and place, as well as defining the Arab problems as they are and presenting solutions to them, this is the view that was victorious.
Pakistan cabinet members took their constitutional oath in the presence of President Pervez Musharraf. Members from the Pakistan Muslim League, headed by Nawaz Sharif, protested against taking the oath under Musharraf by wearing black armbands around their wrists. They refused to participate in the ceremony held by Musharraf after the parliamentarians took their oath. Prime Minister Yusuf Riza Gilani vowed to solve the country's security, political, and economic problems.
The newly elected government took its constitutional oath under the Pakistani President Pervez Musharraf, its past and future opponent. The coalition government, comprised of several Pakistani parties, formed the majority in the parliament. They can take decisions and amend the constitution in ways that might not please Musharraf, who now fears for his political future. The government is comprised of the Pakistan People's Party, the PMLN, headed by Nawaz Sharif, and the Awani National Party. Each of those parties has its own agenda, but they all reject interference by the presidential palace in the functioning of the government. Musharraf realizes this and will do his best to avoid clashing with them.
Musharraf will face many problems with a government that aims to push him away. But he has no choice but to stay in agreement with the government, because if he engages in any political battle, he will lose.
The party of Nawaz Sharif in the government, whose members participated in taking the oath, boycotted the ceremony after taking the oath as a protest against Musharraf and his policy. This is a sign that the struggle has begun.
Musharraf has to respect the will of the people who chose their representatives and refuse Musharraf's policies. He has to leave because it is impossible to work in accordance to his agenda, which is rejected by us and the people.
The government will face sensitive issues. On top of the list is what is called the war on terror, especially after Pakistan's Taliban announced their willingness to negotiate with the government towards ending the security crisis in the country. The Pakistan government will strive to change the constitution to guarantee that it remains in power and prevent the presidential palace from interfering in its course.
Now, US President George Bush says he will work as hard as he can to help Ukraine join NATO. He was speaking after meeting his Ukrainian counterpart in Kiev ahead of a NATO summit in Romania later this week. His announcement could further tensions with Russia, which strongly opposes Ukraine's NATO membership bid. But Bush said Moscow should not have the last word. Well, despite its opposition to NATO's expansion, Russia has said it's prepared to allow the alliance to use its territory to transport supplies to Afghanistan. NATO is struggling to take control of the country, with the ongoing instability partly fueling poverty and corruption there. Bernard Smith went to meet one family in the capital, Kabul, to see if their life had changed since the fall of the Taliban.
Mir Agha and his wife Torpakai live like more than 50% of Afghans, in crumbling homes without even basic amenities. It's a situation that's not changed since the fall of the Taliban 7 years ago. If anything, life's tougher. Rising prices mean the bread they make to sell doesn't produce enough money to feed their 7 children.
We haven't got anything to eat. We don't have anything. Now my eyes are burning. I'm not baking because I like it. I'm baking because I have to. What can I do? I think my children's future will be like mine.
Her children are growing up in a country where some experts put unemployment at more than 60%. The children and 6 million others have access to free education, which is an improvement, but it's unlikely to get them a job, because Afghanistan remains a very dangerous place.
The poor security situation increased the economic activity cost, increased the cost of production. The people life did not change as rapid as could and as rapid as the people wishes and want them. And now, unfortunately, the things get worse and worse.
The bread Mir Agha sells makes the family $4 a day, if they're lucky. He used to make more from his own fruit stall, but fell victim to a plague that ravages many developing countries.
Mir Agha used to sell fruit and vegetables down here in the market in the centre of Kabul, but the bribes that he had to pay the local police, the traffic police and the local council just for his pitch were just too much, and he had to stop. And it's that sort of corruption, just not here at street level, but that is permeating all the way through Afghan government.
Those who don't pay are moved on. At least 50% of the population here has had to pay a bribe at some time, according to one survey. So Mir Agha is stuck selling bread because he can't afford the bribes and because there's no investment to create industry that might give him a job. And that's because the country is unstable. And that leaves the rest of his family stuck in a poverty trap from which there's no escape. Bernard Smith, Al Jazeera, Kabul, Afghanistan.
Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/Mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic video podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.